Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Hampstead School Board meeting for Tuesday, December 10th, 2019. Melissa, will you please call the roll?
Sure. Jason Giard?
Here.
Caitlin Parnell?
Here.
David Smith?
Here.
James Sweeney?
Here.
Karen Yusenka? And Pinkerton Student Liaison, Emma Johnston?
Here.
Thank you. And also seated at the board table is Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Earl Metzler.
Stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In your packets, you have, I believe, 4 sets of minutes. One for our budget workshop on November 26th, another set from our regular meeting of November 26th, our non-public session also from November 26th, and then our budget work session. It says the 10th, I think it's the 9th.
You are correct.
Okay.
That's an error.
For December 9th. Take a few moments to review, and then I'll have a motion. We can, or we can split them up.
I'll make a motion to accept all 4 sets of minutes.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Public comments. Melissa, do we have any public comments this evening?
No, there are no requests tonight.
Thank you. Okay, next up are administrative reports. Start with Mr. Collins.
I was just checking on my report before I came over this evening, and it seems like I wrote it a long time ago, but it was just a week ago. But just a few things just to point out. The Ellis Island thing just before the vacation was awesome. We had a great time. As a matter of fact, I was telling Penny on the way in, she wrote a nice article that one of my students from many years ago reached out to say that it was nice to see that we've come a long way from where we were back when she was a young child, and she was very pleased to see all the work that we were doing on immigrants and all the learning, so the children are learning about their own stories. Concerts went really well, the holiday events, everything's been going well at Central School. We do have an early release tomorrow afternoon. Our teachers are going to be spending a lot of time working on universal design for learning. We're part of a big process at both of our schools, and tomorrow's a big work day with all of our staff. Every single member of the teaching and support staff will be very involved. I found a typo on here on Wednesday, December 11th. It's actually the Reflections Art event. There's a really nice event tomorrow evening at the Central School where we'll be recognizing quite of our young artists, and I use artists in a very broad sense because it does include dance, choreography, film production, literature, music, photography, and visual arts. It's always interesting to go to this event every year, and our kids have done really well over the years when they get carried forth to the state level, so we're very happy with our students there. There's a lot of holiday stuff happening next week. One of the big ones is the kindergartners always look forward to the Polar Express. So that's a fun thing, and they love Cliff West, a local guy here that the kids just adore. And then the holiday vacation break is going to be here before we know it, and we put some information in there. You want to drop by, the school will be open a few days during the vacation. Last thing that I did want to say, and I did put it in my newsletter last week, Nancy Lacasse has determined it is time to retire. So I did send out the panic letter to all of the SAU so that they knew they needed to close for a day or two to recoup, because she's been so important to our school district. Her last day will be at the end of January 2020. One of the things she said to me very specifically, there will not be a Nancy Lacasse day. So I said, you're on. Okay. So anyway, wonderful person, a very dear friend, so she's certainly given an awful lot to this community. She said she would be at the deliberative session in February, so she's not heading right straight to Aruba right away. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. At the middle school, on November 19th, our teachers participated in what is called instructional rounds. And this is a practice that we have been using for years, and Dr. Metzler brought it to us. It's very much like medical rounds. It's teachers observing teachers and then coming together and understanding what we're seeing, what are the best instructional strategies, how are our kids being stretched, and how are our teachers being stretched to learn from one another. So that was a very successful day. We will be doing it again in February. I'm happy to report that Ava Bennett, one of our 8th graders, has won the district level of the VFW's Patriots Pen Essay Contest. And the 300 to 400 word essay was based on what makes America great, and chosen by the VFW Commander-in-Chief. So she will be representing Hampstead at the state level. We wish Ava congratulations and good luck. And thank you to Mrs. Wolf for putting this in place and guiding this process for our students once again this year. UNH, our 8th graders traveled to Durham, to UNH, where they were able to view some plays based on one of our curriculum pieces for 8th grade is called Collections. Those of you who have 8th graders will see that book in their bags, and it's all of our most important literature pieces for students to learn. And there was a performance done at UNH that brought this literature alive, so they could see it in a performance-based venue, and that was very successful. Boston College, our female athletes are traveling to Boston College to meet with the director of women's basketball to just talk about what it takes to become a collegiate athlete. What are the academic pieces? What are the athletic requirements? And Mr. Arroyo has an inn at BC, so our athletes will be traveling there on December 20th. So thank you to Mr. Arroyo for pulling those strings. And ELF, we are up and ready. Our final dress rehearsal was tonight, and actually the kids are still there. And so it's sold out Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. It proves to be a fun and joyful event for everyone. So if you're able to come, please come. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Emma. So we had PGT, which is Pinkerton's Got Talent, which was hosted by FBLA, the Future Business Leaders of America. And so there were a lot of different acts. There was singing, solos and duets, and student-run bands. And then there was also baton twirling and piano playing, just everything. And so it was really cool to go see that. I went. And it was just overall a great night. They raised a lot of money for a good cause. Almost Maine was this past weekend, and that was directed by Mrs. Tartarilla, and it was also amazing. I went Saturday night. A lot of my friends were in it, and I was very proud to see them up there, and I enjoyed it very much. This week, Pinkerton's music program is putting on concerts. Tonight's the choral and bell choir concert, and Thursday is the instrumental concert. And then finally, looking ahead in a few weeks, Pinkerton students will have midterm exams the week of the 14th of January. And so that's just looking ahead. And so that's all for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Emma. Okay, that's it for administrative reports. Moving right along, we have the Pinkerton headmaster, Dr. Oh, sorry.
Go to Jeff, or is he on there somewhere?
Oh, I think that's further down the agenda.
D.
Current business.
Okay, sorry, you're in the current
Oh,
business.
that's okay.
You moved
Sorry,
over there, you positioned yourself. I thought you were ready.
sorry.
Well, it's good to be ready.
Sorry. The Pinkerton headmaster is here to speak with us, Dr. Powers. Thank you very much for joining us tonight and coming over to Hampstead. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having the chance to come speak with you tonight. So,
I know we sent you some questions. I didn't know if you wanted me to ask the questions, or are you just kind of prepared to speak to them?
sure, I can speak to them. One, it was kind of anticipating that you wanted to know how the Hampstead students are doing, which
Yes, of course.
my answer usually to that is, I don't know. Saying in the sense of when they come to Pinkerton, they're Pinkerton students. So the town that they come from, to me, is I have to go back and look and find out where they are from. Because when they get there, we treat them all as one. So, anecdotally talking to some people and listening to what they have to say, the Hampstead students do well. But going back and pulling some numbers and percentages and looking at what they've taken for courses and where they've been over the past 5 years, it does play out to be that case. So if you look at, going back from all the way to 2015, the number of students that have been in the top 10% have gone from, a low of 13 in 1 year to a high of 19. And when you break it down to the percentage of Hampstead students that were enrolled, seniors enrolled at that time, we're looking at, almost 20% of the class in 1 year was in the top 10% of the graduating class. Looking at the courses that they take, with the A-level courses or the AP courses, and that as far as like A-level courses, it's a low of 65% of Hampstead students are enrolled in A-level courses, and then nearly 20%, almost on average 20% every year is enrolled in AP courses. So not only are they doing well, but they're taking challenging courses while they're here at Pinkerton. And then I know, like, speaking towards like athletics and participation in that, we range, between 850 and 900 athletes a year. And Hampstead students that are making athletic teams are between 100 and 125, 165 a year, which ends up being between 14 and 20% of the student athletes that are participating are from Hampstead. So when they get there, they're successful in the classroom, they're successful in the athletic fields. They do participate in clubs and other activities of that. We don't track the club participation as far as that's concerned, so I don't have percentages as far as that for where they are from what town, but when they do get there successfully academically. So whatever you're doing to prepare them to get to high school and that, it's working, because when they get there, they're being successful in that. And I think Emma's a prime example of that with the work that she does and how successful she's been, but also you see the fruits of that and how she participates and what she does here and that. And I wouldn't want to say Emma's a dime a dozen, because she's not, and that, but her success in that is typical of other Hampstead students as well. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I know about this a little bit because I happen to have a Pinkerton student. The Clock Tower Times is a relatively new.
It is. Yeah, we started it last spring, somewhere last spring and that. And it was just basically, it's a monthly newsletter that we send out to share information about things that have gone on. A lot of times the stories are stories that have already run on the website or are going to run on our website. So part of it's to drive traffic back to the website so they can see things that are updated there. There's a message that I include based on what's going on, time of year, time of things that are transpired in that. And we also highlight 3 different faculty or staff. Someone from our management team, a faculty member, and then a support staff member too. So get to see some of the faces that are there behind the scenes that that not everyone gets to see on a regular basis. So part of it's just a communication tool that we use to share with the greater Pinkerton community, not just the faculty, staff, and the rest of Pinkerton, but also for the students and parents and families that go as well. So,
Yeah, so everybody gets
correct.
that.
Yeah, everyone gets a copy of that. So.
Did you have a question?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Just to piggyback on the Times question, can we get a copy of that on the board? Because it's really
Of the
nice to hear what Emma
Oh.
has to say, and we get something from the middle school,
Yeah.
the Hawk happenings. I'm wondering if
I'll forward it to you
we could get that.
when I get it.
Just
Is that okay?
because I don't have a, I don't,
get it
see,
too.
that's the thing. I don't have a child at Pinkerton. I don't have a child at the middle school. So I'm less dialed in to what's on the middle school, and even less dialed in because it's, somewhat out of
Right.
our
Yeah,
scope.
so Dr. Metz, I can forward that to you. Follow me on Twitter, and you can find it when we post it, we
Oh,
retweet it. and
Twitter,
that's-
Facebook, no involvement in that.
That's
But you
Twitter I
won't get
Facebook
his
I don't.
calls that he sends out when school's canceled or delayed.
Well,
'Cause
when my
those are
kids go to
great.
Pinkerton, I'll be dialed in.
There you go.
My question revolves around the social, emotional health
Mm-hmm.
of not just our students, but all students at Pinkerton, and their well-being and how it enhances their ability to learn. So, recently I was reflecting back on Columbine and other shootings and thinking about those kids that were involved. And, some kids are outliers at schools. They don't get support, or some kids get more support than others. I know recently we invested in a person in our district. I'm just wondering, what the ratio, I'm not saying you have to have numbers, but
Right.
if you could just talk about what Pinkerton is doing
Sure.
for the social, emotional well-being of the students.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that's definitely been brought to the forefront of everyone. When you talk about different shootings and things like that, there was one today in Jersey City. My brother teaches down there. It wasn't at his school, but he was close by, and they were in lockdown. And it's scary stuff when you think about it. So, I think we're definitely more attuned to what's going on and having conversations. And I know social emotional learning is a bigger buzzword now, and people are talking about it. But I think part of it just comes down to what we've always done in education is building relationships. When I think back to when I started in the classroom, one of the first things that I was told to do is make sure you know your students, know who they are, and that make connections with them, and that's going to help you to teach them. And I think we just continue to place more and more emphasis on that. So it is different things where we have connections with students, wanting to get to the point where every student knows that they have an adult that they can go talk to, whether it's a teacher, a coach, a counselor, or someone like that, where they have that connection. So we've worked on trying to do different things with our faculty and staff so that they're implementing some of those things in the classroom, but then also looking at other things. Like this year, we're participating in Challenge Day, the Challenge Day program. So we've had, right now, our freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, we've had the smaller assemblies, which have been up to 100 students from each class there, and then coming after the break here, we'll have full class assemblies. So the freshman class will have we'll have an assembly of the sophomores, the juniors, and then the seniors will actually participate, and they'll be split into two because of the number, and have a graduation day, Challenge Day assembly and that. And it speaks to a lot of the opening up and that communication piece and social awareness and social well-being and emotional states and that, so that you have that connection. I didn't partake in one of those days, but other faculty, staff members did, and students did, and we had a thing with student council yesterday, and one student had participated, and he's a good kid, like not one that, you would think of would go to us and say, hey, that was life-changing. He was like, it was. He's like, if you could do this every year with the kid, like this would be great, because it was a life-changing thing for him. And that, so I think that even just makes it more an emphasis that you say that there's some that just seem to not fit in, and that this is for everyone. It's not the ones that you would say just they don't seem to fit in. It's for every student, and making that connection with everyone, because you don't know. And there's always the saying of, smile, be nice to people, because you don't know what battles they are, what's going on in their lives, and that. And I think that's true for every student and for everyone, is making sure we make that connection, because we don't know. We don't know what it is that's going on in their homes, or what it was like that morning. Did they have a breakfast? Did they have a warm place to stay? And even things that we can look at and say now, like your high school, your girlfriend breaks up with you in high school, and that, like, I look back now, be like, oh, okay, big deal. Like, it was not. But you know what? When it happens, like, it is a big deal, and that. So it's making sure that we have things in place, and students know that they have people that they can go talk to make sure that they're in the right setting and in the right state of mind, because we want them to be successful. So always talk about safety and security. Educating students is 1A and 1AA. If they're not safe and secure, and that they can't learn, so we have to make sure that they go hand in hand. So, in a roundabout way, I don't know if that answered the question you asked, but.
No, thank you.
Have any other questions?
I guess my only question is about, you got a lot of different towns, right? And you're trying to manage all those towns. what are the things that you're asking of the towns to think about in their education system to help better prepare the students? You know, you can, not Hampstead specifically, but if you have something for Hampstead, but in general, what are you asking them to concentrate on or improve upon that helps them become high schoolers better?
I think a lot of it always comes back to the fundamentals and continuing to work on that. And I think we've got a good relationship with the setting towns. They meet, you know, the teachers come up and they, based on discipline, and they meet and they talk and they see, and you know, see it as what we're working on, but it's also good to see what they're working on. So to close that gap, because if, you know, if we have the expectation that they're going to come in here knowing this much, and your curriculum brings them up to here, then there's that gap, and we want to make sure. And I think we've been pretty successful in closing that gap and working on those pieces in that. So it is a challenge when you have, you know, different communities, because each one's their own and they want to do things their way, which they have the right and expectation to do. So, but I think progressed and worked together. I think that it's an open door, and there's communications that go back and forth to work on that and get everyone on the same page, and getting students to the same levels going forward, and looking into the classes that they're in. So.
Yes, Dr. Metzel.
Well, thanks for coming. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
You know, and I just wanted to thank you, you know, the meetings that we have, you know, how receptive you are, how much you make Hampstead feel part of Pinkerton. It's incredible, you know, from superintendent's perspective, from the district's perspective. Our kids feel welcome there and supported in so many ways. And, you know, and for our 8th graders, you know, Derry seems like a really far away, but you personally make it feel so much closer. And we really appreciate that from all the families and people that work here. You know, thank you for all that you do for our kids. He always picks up the phone. He's always there when I call. 4:30 in the morning we talk sometimes, sometimes at night, and he's always there for our kids. And so we really appreciate it. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I think that's it. Thank you so much
you.
for coming. We really appreciate the time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right.
Have a good rest of the night, and
Thank
enjoy
you,
your holiday
you
season.
too.
You too.
Thank you.
Okay, next up on the agenda, we have Mrs. Denola, the Hampstead Mothers Club donation. And then you can stay there for the next piece, too.
Hello again. I'm here to ask you to accept a $600 donation from the Hampstead Mothers Club. They have generously offered to donate money so we can get appropriate furniture that is safe and fire retardant and up to all codes that we need. In the Hawk's Nest, it's part of our school counselors' work that we meet with groups and we meet with individual students and creating, God bless you, creating an environment that is conducive to and warm for students to be able to share and talk and problem solve. And we did have a Hawk's Nest, but the furniture was not appropriate. So we're moving on up, and the Mothers Club came to our rescue. So anything over $500, I have to ask permission in order to accept. Do you have any questions about it?
Can I have a motion to accept a $600 donation from the Hampstead Mothers Club, please?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Yes?
No.
Oh,
That was a
Yes or
quick
no?
one.
right, sorry.
Motion, second, vote.
Okay.
That's
All
what
in
we'll
favor?
do it from now on. We
All
won't
in
even-
favor?
We'll just
I
happen.
like that.
Be fluid.
Thank you.
Motion, second, vote.
And you can stay because you're up next
Thank you
for
very
the
much. And another
field trip proposal.
piece that I need to ask your permission for is for our students to go to Washington DC for our 8th graders. We have gone for the past few years. Last year we went in June. It was very warm and it was a little too late in the season for us. And so Mrs. Wolf has gotten together with our travel agent and looked at the week before April vacation will be cooler, a little after cherry blossom time. This is a great opportunity for students whose families may not be able to travel as much as others. So we would like to make this opportunity available to this graduating class this year. The cost will be approximately $680 per student, but of course we will have angel funds available for any students requiring some financial assistance. We never go without all of our Hawks on board. So this is a great opportunity. The students will visit the Supreme Court, the United States Capitol building. They have a jam-packed day. It's about 18 hours a day of traveling and observing and speaking to any congressmen or senators around, and we're asking permission to go again this year. And thank you to Mrs. Wolf for her vision and giving our kids this opportunity.
Can I have a motion to approve the 8th grade trip to Washington, D.C.?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
You were doing it.
Wait, I have to say this, though. Is there any discussion or questions?
I have a question.
I know, he was rushing me.
Mr. Smith?
Yes, usually do you max out at the 80 students?
No,
You
no.
don't, okay.
We'll go as far as we can go.
Okay.
We can
that's
get
what-
every student to go, but sometimes there's family vacations, there's sports events, and
So if you had 120 students, you'd be able to bring
we'll
120?
get another bus.
Awesome, thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
No, Jim.
All in favor?
Thank you very much. The kids
Thank
will be
you.
very excited.
Thank you.
That's great.
Okay, next up, Mr. Mackey is going to give us an update on the DOE building safety audit.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, go ahead.
So I'm not introducing Jeff Mackey to Hampstead because he's
Oh,
from
right.
Hampstead,
Yes, that's
but
true. He hasn't-
We are welcoming you to the school district, and he's had his opportunity almost your first 90 days. And
Yep.
we had you start a new job, and, we get a visit from the Department of Ed, and they want to point all the things he needs to do. But it ended up being a nice opportunity, because he had an opportunity to meet every single teacher, every para, go through every room, and I just wanted to say thank you, because it's an incredible amount of work, and very responsive, and just doing a great job. So welcome
Appreciate
and
it.
thank you, and I'm glad you could come tonight. So it's
Yep.
all yours.
So yes, as you see in your agenda, I took a little snippet out of a letter that that was mailed to both principals, explaining why we have a facility review. They do come up at random, and we were selected for this year. We were notified early September, and the walkthrough was for November 4th. And as you see, Marjorie Schoonmaker from the Department of Ed came through for the walkthrough. Took us about 5 hours to get through both schools. During the walkthrough, she found a bunch of very common and minor violations, as they would call it. And as I went through with her, I noted down each deficiency for each room. November 6th, the entire Hampstead School District staff was notified of the most common deficiencies that needed attention. After that, I ended up receiving dozens of emails over the next week or so. I reached back out to them. I ended up meeting up with every single one that came to my, needing my help. It was a good meetup because I was able to, explain to them, show them why, because it was, as Dr. Metzler said, it was kind of a quick, came about walkthrough, and it was kind of a stunner. So on November 6th, they were all notified, they reached out, I was able to meet up with them over the next couple of weeks. On November 21st, Dr. Metzler, Mr. Dowd, Mr. Flynn, and myself performed a follow-up walkthrough and personally talked to each staff. As we walked through, we were able to see and understand the needs that the instructional staff needed, and we wanted to see how we can meet that. And upon this point, we were well ahead of schedule. We were given 30 days to fix the more common minor violations. We did have a couple troubled rooms, such as the industrial arts room at the middle school, the music room at the middle school, the art room storage at the central school, and the mezzanine at the central school. With that being said, I ended up doing another walkthrough myself to finalize so I could give a report to Marjorie Schoonmaker after our 30 days. And during that, I found out that we had come almost 100%. We're very close. We have the mezzanine that is upon, I would say, very close, halfway, maybe a little further into completion. The music room at the middle school is up to par. The art room storage is just about done, and the industrial arts is just about done. A few of these need to wait until we have some time. Teachers aren't in the rooms, students aren't there, just to adjust. For example, I'm waiting on an electrician for next week for a couple of minor outlets to be put in and a heater to be put in. And as of December 5th, I ended up sending Marjorie a follow-up email notifying her that the process that we went through and how well we've done at both schools. And I want to thank both Mr. Collins and Mrs. Denola and their staff for doing a phenomenal job. They were all cooperative. Everyone was understanding, once they were able to find out why we have this. And a lot of these were, rules that were in effect for a while, but they were just kind of, we really didn't have anyone here to, explain to people that, this needed to happen and we needed to follow this. So I appreciate everyone's help, and that's where we're at. So, any questions?
No, I don't. This is great. Thank you
Yep.
so much for
You're
preparing
welcome.
this and for coming tonight to
Not a problem.
update us, because we had heard just a little bit, but this
Most definitely, yeah. And they come at random. They happen every few years. I know Marjorie herself came, she said that she had been to the Hampstead schools about 9 years ago, but there are a couple other people that do work in her office they switch up. They don't have the same schools every couple of years, so it does. It comes at random, but they have been known to come. I found some paperwork where I believe they had come in 2014 and potentially 2017 as well. So it's not anything new. It's just something that we need to keep up on, and now we know. And as Dr. Metzer said, it's a learning experience, and I'm glad I was able to experience it. So, yeah.
throw you right into it, really,
Yep. Hey,
because
you
that
know
was
what? The
very
best way to
soon
do
after
it.
you started.
It's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Jeff, what is a common deficiency in a room? Like hanging paper or
Common
clutter?
things such as we're not allowed to use extension cords anymore. Those seem to have been a thing back in the day. We're allowed to use surge protectors. You're not allowed to daisy chain them, so no surge protector inside surge protector. That was a common one. No more than 20% of your wall covered with any paper product. Small things like that. And it was stuff that, we were on the line. It was very little things. There could have been one extension cord. Nothing hanging from the ceilings. A lot of people were, a lot of classes would put artwork. We're not allowed to compromise the ceiling. So it's very little things like that. And I mean, the teachers were great once they understood why and how.
If I could, one of the things, obviously, when you're trying to warm up a room, in this commercial property, and you typically do it with residential kinds of things, and they don't necessarily blend in terms of,
Most definitely.
and a lot of times it has to do with it being fire retardant and those sorts of things, or lighting, or things that you would bring into your home that you couldn't have in a commercial kind of space. I think that's was probably one of the more common things,
It was,
lampshades that came from home, or rugs, or different things that
Exactly.
they didn't really want in our classrooms for different reasons. So we were able to find alternatives and kind of still warm up the rooms with things that meet those kind of commercial or DOE guidelines, which is great.
Yeah, it's all about having the right stuff. Like Dr. Metzer said, you want to have a fire retardant rug. You can't just bring one in that's just bought and it's not up to code. We can have rugs. It just needs to be, we can have lamps. They just need to be, they can't be cloth. Cloth cracks, it absorbs dust and so forth. They can be plastic shades and whatnot. So very, very simple things, so.
Quick question. Do we have anything in place or a plan for maybe future staff members that come in so that we don't have these violations in the future?
Yes, we've actually discussed a little bit. We're going to talk a little more in depth on that and giving maybe a refresher, early in the year to show them before they set up their rooms, because it was kind of a blow, coming in November, they're already a couple months in, and hey, you can't have this, or we need to adjust, and we need to do this, and a lot of the teachers were great. They knew. They said, you know what, I totally get it. I understand. And, but you're right. It would be nice to have something at the beginning of the year so we don't run into this again.
It's something to hand to new staff members, new
Yep,
teachers coming in.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of times that's, in terms of the collegiality piece, you're asking the person next to you, and, if we let our guard down a little bit, and
Right.
1 becomes 2, becomes 4, becomes 8, and I think it's not necessarily, it's something we talked about being on the checklist at the beginning of the year when we're talking about setting up our rooms, but I think as our custodial staff becomes more comfortable, they have an eye for it, and would point things out to particular staff members, or people will know who to ask, is this particular item okay for my room, and just everybody has a little bit heightened expertise, I guess, in terms of what is appropriate, what's inappropriate for, public school classroom.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Jeff. Next is, warrant articles discussion. Mr. Dowd.
Well, good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the board. My name is Jeff Dowd. I'm the District Business Administrator, Chief Financial Officer. In front of you, in your packets, you have a draft sample of what or a starting place, if you will, for what our warrant would look like. And you can see some of these are very standard. Article 1 is election of officers. Article 2 historically has been the bond. Article 3 is the operating budget. And I'll go through and highlight upon a few points. You have some collective bargaining agreements that are in there by number. And then we have the standard authorization on a special meeting on cost items, which gives the board the authority to hold such a meeting. Article 7 is a capital reserve contribution, and Article 8 is a general acceptance of reports. So that's the general roadmap. If you recall, any bonds that we have are required to be listed as generally as Article 2 on the warrant itself. So I know we may have a further discussion on any warrant articles or potential warrant articles that you have. I don't know if, right now, if there's anything that we don't have in here as a sample. I know as our collective bargaining agreements are approved, they'll be populated. If they are approved, they'd be populated in the respective article numbers. Pretty basic, pretty simple. I don't know if the board has had a chance to review them. If you have any questions on that, I would, and I don't know how it's going to work out exactly, but I think one of the bigger issues for consideration this year is probably going to be the level of capital reserve fund contribution and what the impact is on that. So I don't know if that's a good discussion to have now. Typically, we've been in about, let's say, the $150,000 range, $125,000 range, and typically we've not used the first $150,000 or $125,000 of immediate surplus. We've allowed that to go back to the taxpayers, and we would then request anything above that to whatever amount you include in that warrant. If it's $125,000 or $150,000 or more or less, whatever it is, then be placed into the capital reserve fund. As a reminder, that capital reserve fund is a fund that's held separately from the district. It's held by the trustees of the trust fund, and we have terms under which those funds are to be used. And typically it's in relation to expenditures for capital items, building-related, major expenditures, that sort of thing. So we have that, and I don't know where we're going to be on that. I don't know if that's a further discussion. I think certainly having this out there in draft form at least provides a roadmap as to what we can expect. You don't have a lot of meetings left. You have time certainly to have these tweaked a little bit, but give further consideration to any other warrant articles we may want to include. Now would be a good time to begin thinking about that.
Yes, and I think that raises a good point, which kind of connects to our next agenda item anyways, talking about the central school renovation. So I'm going to skip a little bit here. I would like to talk about the renovations, and then coming back to something you just said, Jeff, I would like to have a discussion about the capital reserve warrant item. So I think if you're good, you can stay there, because we might. Talking about the central school renovation, and I'm going to review several things probably that the board already knows. But this is to speak to the town in general, speak to the public. This has been on many agenda items, many agendas over the last couple of months. We have been having workshops related to the central school renovation, related to the budget. We have tried to look at this a lot of different ways. Our last couple of meetings, we've talked in depth about, we were looking at phased approaches. We were looking at different options that might be available to us to offset the cost to the taxpayers. And as we've gone around and around and around and talked to our construction team and talked to our administrators and talked as a board, it would appear at this point that it does not make sense to put forward a renovation project this year to the voters. It's a hard decision to make, but we do feel like it's the right decision for this year. We have an opportunity in the coming couple of years where we might have an opportunity for building aid. And keeping that in mind, which is a huge bonus to any sort of building project, it certainly will offset the cost to our taxpayers if we were to be awarded that by the state, and there is no guarantee, but certainly a better chance than we've had in the last few years when it just hasn't even been an option. To put forward a project this year would really make it very difficult to apply for building aid, and we would certainly not be able to start anything, it would look like at this point, for over a year, and that really doesn't work with our voting process and when we're asking the town to commit to putting taxes and funds towards those projects. We also looked very much the last 2 weeks at, can we fund the 60s wing renovation using capital reserve and perhaps looking to squeeze the budget. But looking at what the cost of that would be by itself, the only way to do that would have started to impact the education of our students because of the way we would have to cut, the ways we would have to move items in the budget and squeeze the budget. And that's not something that this board is willing to do at this point. So we're still getting some last bits of information. But at this point, we are looking at not putting forward a renovation project for Central School. That doesn't mean we don't have a long-term plan, because one thing that we certainly have learned over the past couple of months is when you have more time for planning, it gives us more time to get information, and it can be a better outcome for both our students and our staff and the people in town who would be supporting a project like this. I do want to ask anyone else on the board if they have any comments or thoughts, and then I will speak to the warrant item I'm kicking around in my head. Anybody else?
Well, we're not 100% saying we're not putting up something. It's looking like that.
It's looking like that, and
We're still,
there are a few things we are still looking at, mostly related, no, solely related to what we could do for the 60s wing. Yes, there is a small chance we will be able to do something, but with the information we have in front of us right now, we probably won't do that. But yes, we have a little bit of time between, this is our last scheduled meeting, but we have talked about, and potentially we'll be noticing a special meeting for next week if we get some information that would change that. Did you have something, David?
Yeah, I'd just say that I think this is the smart thing to do for the town, only because this gives us time to really look at the plan, do bottoms up, challenge some numbers, understand everything, and do the proper messaging and proper education to the voters. You know, we've got 3 very short months. Once you take the holidays, New Year, you know, that it's almost setting us up for failure if we do this. There's a lot of information that the town needs to know, especially when we talk about state refund, what that means, if there's any additional grants, if there's any additional funding we could get from just different things that are out there. This allows us to see what we can really get to bring down that cost and increase for the kids what they can receive. There's, like you said, over the last few months, we've done a lot of walkthroughs on the information, and just for us to digest it has taken a lot of time. So in order to get this out there and, you know, show the voters that we're doing this the right way, get that goodwill rolling in our favor, especially this year where there's a lot of things going on that the voters may or may not know between negotiating 2 contracts. There's the SAU withdrawal that's hanging over our heads. There's a lot out there that we need to, you know, iron out first, and then I think this is really the right direction.
Anyone else?
If I may, Madam Chair, I'd like to stress that, to make it clear to the public, that after much consideration and deliberation, really you're not looking to push forward any bond-related renovation project. And one of the reasons for that is that in looking at the way that in building aid for schools is starting to be funded again, there's a big drop-off coming up. There will be some more availability, more so than there has been in the past. The state is moving away from long-term commitments, and they're looking to fund projects on an annual basis. However, if a project were approved this budget year, we would not be eligible really to even start the project until the next budget year. And in order to continue to be good stewards of taxpayer resources, it would be really, really helpful to understand how our project is looking in terms of qualifying for any grant. We're a 35% community, 35% match community. So if there is a possibility for that to exist, really the board would have to wait that extra year. And in doing so, I think that we'd be able to better gauge what the actual impact would be and really minimize the impact we can. The needs at the schools still exist. Classes are still tight. We still have not a great security situation. We have some areas of, I know fire suppression, but in particular some stairways that make me, one stairway that makes me particularly nervous. Really, we've moved special ed to the middle school, and it's very, very, very tight in that school right now. Class sizes are probably higher than we would like them to be, and up against, in some cases by state standards, up against our own, your own board thresholds. So those needs still very, very much exist. In the meantime, what you alluded to is if we can find some money in the budget, maybe utilize some capital reserve to undertake some repairs on the 60s wing, that would be a great option. But those prices, that really needs to be vetted out at this point to make sure that we're delivering a proposal to the taxpayers that is well-founded and sound, and it meets the needs of the district. The only problem is that will help with efficiency. We may qualify for other grants, energy-related, on that project. We would not be qualifying for for building aid per se. So, but I can't count on those projects because on that grant money, you only know about that really until once you're going to start the project and you have it designed out. So if that portion of the project would be feasible out of the budget, out of capital reserve, that would be something that I think the board would be open and is still considering. So I'll make that very, very clear. But even that project completed, from a business office perspective, makes me very happy because it will increase energy efficiency. From a school board perspective, it will enhance learning environments, but it really does not satisfy so many of the needs that are still out there, but I think it is something that needs to be done as a matter of efficiency and just to show our good stewardship of taxpayer funds.
Thank you, Jeff. That was well put. Thank you very much. So slightly tabling this till we have a few more pieces of information. But now circling back to our warrant items, keeping in mind that we are not going to ask for a bond, I'm looking at the capital reserve. I would like to propose, and I'd like to have some discussion and then maybe a motion. I'd like to propose that we look to ask for $250,000 to capital reserve. As a reminder, you mentioned this, Jeff, but for anyone who's watching, when we talk about the capital reserve fund and what we generally put in this article is that the first $150,000 of any surplus is automatically returned to the taxpayers. So the number that we would put forward, whether it's 250, whether it's 125, that would only be put into capital reserve if we had that surplus available after the initial 150 was returned to the taxpayers. My reasoning for the 250 is knowing what we have in there now, which is about 7 to 750.
Let's say 770.
Okay. That puts us up to $1 million. And one of the things we've been talking about a lot is utilizing capital reserve for a building project for the 60s wing or something else. I think this gives us more of a really good chunk of the cost of that. Should we either utilize it in conjunction with a larger building project and we use this to offset it, or if we were to, next year, just use it for one particular piece. So I can put forward the motion, and then we can discuss, or we can talk first.
So would your motion be for a $250,000 contribution to capital reserve out of surplus after the first
Yes.
150,000 of surplus. Okay.
Yes.
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, so I motioned, I guess. I never motioned. David second, and then we can discuss.
So typically, do we know what the average surplus is every year? And I know it's a ballpark.
$1 million, $1.5 million. It really, really depends. But what is surplus? We have fund balance retention that comes out of that as well, and there are a number of different factors. So typically, we've been able to meet that and still return quite a bit to the, to the taxpayers.
We typically, when we're looking at spend rates,
Yeah.
our hope is somewhere in that 3 to 5%.
Right.
And that puts us right around there, maybe a little bit more than that, at 6, 7%, but that's a safe number. I mean, when I say safe number, I think it's something we can count on, I guess. Right, Jeff?
I think so, and I think that you can count on there still being return to the taxpayers.
Okay.
You have a motion and a second, right?
Yeah, we do.
So I'll just point out to the board that what I'm finding to be the need is that when we have a project like the 60s wing and a number of projects that we have that are outstanding or that are becoming due in the district, sometimes we can't go in a discrete way and address a problem efficiently or effectively. And I'll give the 60s wing as an example. If you replace windows, when you replace those windows, that you subsequently replace siding, those windows need to tie into siding. If you replace your roof, you don't want to be coming back and addressing an HVAC unit on the roof at the time. You want all of that to be done at one time. And not that the projects themselves get more expensive, but some of the projects that we'd be looking at in the future do have some complexity to them where additional funding is well recommended. So that's the nature, I think, of how that gets built up and why it would be built up.
Yep. Any other questions or discussions?
I'm tempted to say a little bit more than
I was
that.
just going to say that.
You know,
Okay. I'm willing to
and the
amend
reason-
my motion, or,
And the reason why is because, I get that, it'll bring us up to about $1 million and we can do a lot. But if we have a surplus of X amount, if, thinking as a taxpayer, if we have that amount, I'm already expecting my taxes to be that much. And it's great that we're going to get back the first 150 and then whatever the balance on that. So that's another 750,000 or whatever if we stay at $1 million, right? They're going to get somewhere around that. But we do need some of this to come back to the schools, and we know there's a big just elephant in the room over there. 250 will get us someplace, but I think if we go up to, I'm trying to think of what is the best to be on the ballot. If it's 350, 400, but I'd want to push up a little bit more because every penny's going to count, and it's going to do us justice next year when we're really making that big push for what we really need for that school. So I'm not sure what the board thinks about what is that number that's going to get the votes to allow this, but I'm thinking 400 is where my mind is at.
thoughts? I'm seeing a lot of nodding, so.
I think it gets us a lot closer to where we need to be. We can do a lot more with that. I would agree with being closer to 4.
Yeah. And I would anticipate after this big push, we bring it back down to where it's traditionally been. This is not going to be the norm. This is for that big push that we need. But
Yes,
If I
Dr.
could, and we talked a lot about, budget challenges and what we can do. This is a different way of looking at it. Right, so the challenge would be for us to try to come back with more surplus so that, right?
oh yeah, that's what we need to start doing too. So,
Yeah, so if we were looking at, you're looking at 550, because if you're saying 400, you're looking at 550, obviously more than that, but at least 550. I know, because we've been looking at the budget from a different perspective about trying to squeeze the budget without making sure that we can deliver all the services as best we possibly can. I think that's a number that we could make pretty comfortably.
The only consideration the board may have on that is if we do end up proposing a project as a warrant article, a part of the budget, whatever it is, and it does require an ask from the voters, in addition to whatever we have, for the next upcoming fiscal budget year, we're going to be pulling some from capital reserve, pulling some from the budget perhaps. maybe consider that, how much that should be if we're going to have to ask the voters to cover some of the funding for the 60s wing. But if not, it would be in anticipation certainly of being able to get that project tackled in relatively short order.
Right.
After that.
Okay, can I amend my motion, or do we have to withdraw it and do a new one?
I'm thinking that you would just amend it. If you're not going to vote on the first motion that was made, it just dies, and you would just do another motion instead, if the board's in agreement to do that. Does that make sense?
Yes. Sorry. Do you want to bring that forward before I change it?
I had to save up to put a roof on my house, so if collectively the town could save up for the project,
Jim,
I don't know what that
500,000.
magic number is, Would 500,000, would the voters be okay with that? I mean, this is for the elephant in the room. This isn't just so we can have $500,000, or whatever that would end up translating to. I know we're just, I don't know what that does percentage-wise, or,
I mean, I'm going to look, I would like some feedback. You already gave it to us, but some additional, Jeff and Dr. Metzler, do you have any feeling about, are you more comfortable if it's, that we can achieve it, if it's 400,000 versus 500,000?
If you're getting into the neighborhood of 500,000, it would seem to me that you have a definite plan in place, maybe a phased approach. And if we have something like that in place and can identify and articulate specifically what we would like to do, you're almost treating that as 50%, as half funding, perhaps not half, but substantially funding a project which would be completed in the budget year subsequent. Mm-hmm. So as I said, if we end up not proposing any renovations to that 60s wing, the 500 would have to be really tied in, and it might be a tight budget year for some folks generally. 400 might be a better number because you're still really taking a big chunk out of project cost in a subsequent year, even at 400,000.
Would we ask up to 500? Right? In the event that, what if we didn't have, for some reason, we didn't have, is that how we would word it?
It's almost implied, yeah.
It does say, on here it says appropriate up to.
Yeah, if you can't appropriate, it's not available.
Okay, so we're good.
But there's not the type of thing that we could go and say, well, 500, but if we can't return enough to shareholders after that, then the board could go in and say, well, it should only be 400. I think that in taking this approach, the question is, should the amounts have been a little higher historically? Should it have been 125 10 years ago, 150, 7 years ago, 200, 5 years ago, and so on and so forth? But we are where we are, and certainly to go from 150 to 400, that's a jump.
Yeah.
And I think that there could be some wariness of the impact of going from 150 to 500, even though there's no taxation requested.
Right, but not everyone's going to understand that.
But it's in the messaging, right? So the
Right.
messaging is no big project on the ballot, no bond issue. We're saving money that potentially will take care of one of the phases, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a different strategy, but I think in the messaging, I think people would say, oh, okay, I think we're saving for phases that need to be done. I think that's something I hear in town a lot. They know we need to do something, and we're having a hard time agreeing on what that something is, but now you've chunked it into different phases, and this is a responsible way to save to be able to pay for potentially one of those phases, correct?
Correct.
And I think that's good vote, right? I mean, and that would be the messaging. That's why the number's so different.
Even with solid messaging, it's a big jump over where we had been previously. 400 is a big jump as well. And again, even though it doesn't call for direct taxation, it's less money that we're sending back to the taxpayers.
But a very, very different strategy. In the past, it was to save for the big surprise, right? It's not a surprise now. These are phases of things that we know we need to get done, and it's a responsible way to save and put money aside for one or more of those phases over time. It may be a strategy or something you may continue for many years and do phase after phase in a similar fashion. Who knows? But we do know that the 60s wing is something that we need to address, and this may be the most responsible way to go about that.
And certainly, being able to benefit from coupling it with potential for building aid if it were to be available is a wise choice.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'm leaning more towards 4, amending my motion to 4, just so it doesn't look as big a jump, even though it's not additional taxation. Did you have something, David? I'm sorry.
No, I'm leaning towards 4 because, it's 150 automatically goes back. 400 is what we're asking for. And if the budget is, if we typically run that 3 to 5%, and it's $1 million to $1.5 million, we're bringing back another $500,000 to the taxpayer also on top of that. So it's close to splitting, but it is giving more back to the taxpayer, which we should be doing, to show that goodwill. It's going to give us time again to plan properly instead of rushing a project for the following year. And then we have a bigger chunk of change that we need to the 60s wing if that's all we can do that following year. But I think it gives us that room in the wallet that we need. That's really, right now, one reason for not being able to do the 60s wing this year is because it's just out of our grasp. It's just there, but it's not, we can't get there right now with what we have in the reserve and in the budget. So I think this gets us so that next year, no matter what, we're able to get there with a 60s wing.
Yeah.
coupled with a solid plan.
Right.
Like that on a Facebook.
Well, that's, yeah,
That's,
thank you.
yeah.
Okay, so my motion is, I motion that we raise and appropriate up to $400,000 to be placed in the capital reserve fund after the first 150 of surplus is returned to the taxpayers. That's my motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion?
One more question for you procedurally. This is typically something that goes on the warrant.
Yeah.
Is the vote that you're taking now to put that number, or make that number available on the warrant, or is the vote that you're taking right now to serve as a recommendation for that warrant item?
I think that's,
You can come to a consensus that the number's 400, and if you wanted to leave it open and vote later.
I mean, it's essentially both.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, if it's both, then that helps.
It's both.
Good,
It's both.
perfect.
Okay, all in favor? Thank you.
We're good? Any other questions on the warrant?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
Thank you.
He's still up.
What?
He's still up.
Oh, Jeff, you can come back if you want. So next, we're talking about the Hass tentative agreement ratification. I have the main points, which I was looking, that I wanted to put out first, and then we can ask questions. And I believe the board has what I'm going to give you in your packets already. I think Melissa gave them to you. So a tentative agreement has been reached for the 3-year period from July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2023. The cost of the tentative agreement over each of the 3 years are as follows. For 2020 through 2021, the cost is $65,434.68. For the years 2021 through 2022, the cost is $55,841.28, and it's the same for the years 2022 through 2023. I need to click. Which, all of them?
No, just the 2021. Oh, forget it.
Thank you for not making me repeat. Thank you.
Those are all the details.
Okay. I do also want to clarify, those are increases. That's not the total cost of the contract.
That would be a good contract.
Yeah, right. These increases reflect an expansion of the wage schedule from 3 to 6 steps. This will enhance the district's ability to hire staff with experience by being able to offer a higher hourly rate based on experience, which we have not been able to do in the past. Current employees who are placed on the schedule receive a minimum of 55 cents an hour increase in year 1, and all employees who are off schedule receive a 55 cents an hour increase. In years 2 and 3, the schedule is increased by 15 cents an hour each year, and employees on schedule advance 1 step for a total increase of 65 cents an hour each year. Employees off schedule receive an increase of 60 cents an hour each year. In addition, a new differential of 50 cents an hour was added for those paraeducators who work with students with intense needs, which that is determined by the principal or the director of special education. An additional differential of 25 cents an hour was added for any paraeducator who is certified as a registered behavior technician and is working with a student with intense behavioral needs. This will help the district attract and retain employees in these difficult-to-fill positions. A new provision was added to compensate paraeducators for covering a classroom for an absent teacher at the rate of $30 per day for a minimum of 2 hours or 2 class periods. Other significant revisions to the agreement are as follows. Article 8.1D, redemption of sick days for retiring employees, was modified to require notice by March 1st of the year of retirement to increase the number of eligible employees from 4 to 6 in any given year, and to allow up to 3 employees to rescind that notice of retirement. Article 9.3, Hampstead Experience Incentive will be phased out for year-round employees who qualify for vacation. Existing year-round employees will continue to receive the incentive, but employees hired after July 1st, 2020 will not be eligible. Again, that's only for year-round employees who also qualify for vacation. This will result in future savings for the district. In addition, a provision which disqualified any employee who used more than 5 unpaid leave days in a year was eliminated, as it was an administrative burden to try to track that information. Article 11, union dues deductions, was clarified to provide clear process for employees to rescind their authorization and to stop deductions. Article 14, the discipline section was modified to allow an oral warning to be followed by written documentation, including a brief statement of the specific improvement needed. A provision was also added requiring employees to sign all disciplinary documentation. Other minor revisions to the agreement are the following. Article 1, technology assistant, was added to the bargaining unit. Article 5, minor changes were made to the posting requirements for vacancies to simplify the process for administration. A change was to require employees wanting to apply for open positions to submit an online application, and a provision was added to assure that employees reassigned temporarily to a lower pay grade would not have their wages reduced. Article 8.1E, the Human Resources Director, was added to the Board of Review for the Disability Bank, or the Sick Leave Bank. Article 15.1A, the employee's work schedule will be established in the letter of employment verification and may be changed only after notice and an opportunity for input from the employee. Article 15.1B, overtime provisions were clarified to assure that if compensatory time is earned, it is earned at the rate of 1.5. Article 16.7, a new section was added to allow extended school year staff the opportunity to elect 16 equal pays, which is current practice, but we clarified it in the tentative agreement. So that is the tentative agreement with HASS, our support staff union. Are there any questions?
Could you read that again?
Yeah, sure, the whole thing? Do you want me to start at the beginning? So we need to ratify this to move it on to the ballot. Yes.
So a couple quick notes for you.
Yes.
This, it does not, you can ratify this agreement and take separate action to recommend it on the warrant when all of your
Okay.
board members are present.
Okay.
I've also looked at the numbers, the figures that are listed. They do include the anticipation of costs that we know, including such as, for example, the differential, 50 cents per hour for the paraeducators who work with students with intense needs. We can quantify that, so we've been able to quantify those costs. They're included. And FICA is included in that as well. So really, it would be generally the total cost.
Okay, so we need to ratify it
Correct.
tonight. Can I have a motion to ratify the tentative agreement with Hass?
So moved.
Second.
Any additional discussion or questions? Okay, all in favor?
Okay, thank you.
Do you have a question? I had one for you.
Well, as far as moving it to the ballot,
This will allow us to put it on the ballot, and we can come back at the next meeting. You have a number of warrant articles to look at anyway and make recommendations on, so you can perhaps take a vote at that time to recommend it.
so we could do that at the special meeting.
If you have the benefit of all your board members present.
Okay,
I would like to clarify one issue. I know we're off warrant, so forgive me.
okay,
Are
we can go back.
we, and I wasn't quite clear, but the numbering of the warrant itself is a lot less confusing if you can get it right as early on as possible. Are we a safe place to remove Article 2 relating to the bond?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
The
And then
the consensus is we will not be putting forward a bond.
So we'll make sure that gets off. And then from now on, Article 2 would be the operating budget, so on and so forth. It makes the discussion going forward, referencing article numbers a lot easier. So now we can just take that off from future drafts, so.
Yep.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we are on to 2020-21 draft school calendar preliminary review. Mr. Flynn.
Good evening. In your packets, you will see a draft of the 2021 school calendar. As I'm learning with Hampstead School Districts, it's a bit different because we rely on Pinkerton for input. So there, actually I spoke with Derek Lee at Pinkerton. They're in the midst of drafting theirs as well. Once theirs is finalized, we will make decisions what's best for Hampstead moving forward, but that it gives you an early indication of what the school year will look like. The HEA has already weighed in on it as well. I presented it to the administrative team today. They have had their input on it. You could see a possible revision between now and January, but we certainly wanted to get your eyes on it so you could at least see what the next year could look like.
This has us going late.
It's that winter break that's becomes a challenge again of
Yeah.
where it falls. It's not a,
Yeah.
2 years ago we had a week off. You know,
Right.
this, now 2 years from now, we're gonna have almost a week and a half. Almost 2 weeks.
That goes for voting day. Voting day.
Oh, in November?
What's on here?
It's on
November
there,
3rd.
it's November 3rd. It's, so we won't have
Yeah.
school on that day. It'll be professional development for the teachers on the election day.
Do we typically take December 23rd off?
Yes.
We do, okay.
I'm sorry, December 23rd. I thought you said November.
Yeah.
This year we have. we
Well, it's
have
a
off.
Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We have
so
off.
it's kind of a weird, usually we do. I think in the past, we've pretty traditionally taken the 23rd because people are traveling.
I've taken the last 4 years' trend to make this, so.
Nope,
Yeah,
just out of
no,
curiosity, so
yep,
thank you.
clarifying on where it was.
So I think with calendars, you get what the challenges are, right? So, one of the changes here, although you still see an early release days, you're not seeing a lot of early release days. You're seeing professional development days that are full days, as opposed to, half a day where the children are excited to get out of school, and then that's a full day of work, and then they have a whole second full day of work with PD, rather than have some uninterrupted professional development time, which is great. So a lot of times you'll see, and there's a little bit of a balance here, right? So sometimes, wouldn't it be great to have the professional development on a Friday so that they can have a 4-day weekend, right? If the Monday's off. Well, it's good and bad, right? Because the people that we're giving professional development to also have children, and they're in other districts, or they're in our district, so that's not always the best time to do PD, although sometimes it's convenient to schedule it there. So you'll see that on one of the Fridays in October. However, there are other times, so it's kind of mixed in. And then we also have to be sensitive to, if we're bringing people in from somewhere else, if we schedule it in January or February, and it gets canceled because of snow, we may already have an investment that we lose, or the opportunity to bring that person back. So I think there's a lot of challenges, as well as orphan days, meaning like if you look, this is a challenge, you get to June 21st is, I call it an orphan Monday, it's a one-day week. Well, the likelihood is we'd have snow days added onto that, or not, and we may come to you early, we'd be able to come to you earlier in the year, I think, and say, we've met the hours, what do you think about that last day that's coming back for just a one day? So, a lot of challenges. Again, an early draft, I think it'll get kicked and punched
I think
a number of times.
you'll see some shifts probably here and there.
A little bit of a shift.
Yep. One of the questions I have, I just want to make sure I'm looking at this correctly, would be November 11th, 12th, 13th. So it looks like November 11th is off for Veterans Day.
Correct.
Then we come back for a half day for students.
The reason why that sticks is because that's parent-teacher conferences.
Well, isn't that what we have for that Friday?
It's 2 days.
It's 2 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you think about a teacher with 5 classes of 20 students and, trying to schedule all those conferences, it's hard to get them in, even with the extra hours added onto the day, so.
I know it's an oddity, it stood out there as a day off, half day, day off. Just making sure that we're doing the right thing for everybody involved.
That kills my wife's schedule. That type of setup.
So you move it to the week before, you fall into the same thing, right? So you have off on Tuesday, then you have a
Right.
whole day, then you come back, then you have a half day, then a whole day. Then you go back, if you move it to the following week, then you're butting into Thanksgiving. So that falls right into that end of that quarter, and it's really the perfect slot for meeting. It's just a rough month.
Right.
And what day is voting next year?
The 3rd. We have it, it's not.
Oh, that's PD/E.
It's the
That's
E's for
professional
election.
development day, and that's not even ideal because we have to work on the parking because
Right.
getting people in and out of the building. But I'll give you another example why the early release days are somewhat challenging. And Dr. Powers was here earlier today, and you're talking about tomorrow, so we have an early release. Like if Pinkerton delays, right? We can't delay. It's no school, right? We wouldn't delay an early release day. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And,
Right.
and that was, we had a delay a little while back, which we may not have needed to delay, but Pinkerton delayed at 5:30, and we have to delay if they delay because of the buses, because we're 3-tiered buses. So we coordinate that the best we can, but, what's happening in Hampstead isn't really always the same for all the sending towns in Pinkerton that he has to take into consideration. So those are some challenges. So those early release days, especially in the winter, can be tricky, especially because we don't have an opportunity to delay 2 hours.
Come in for an hour and go home.
So we have that tomorrow, and we even had the questions about blizzard bags. We said that's professional courtesy to staff. You put together whatever you think is an appropriate assignment for the day that you would have had. We're not saying, make them shorter because it's a release day. We're not saying make them longer because
Yeah.
it's not a release day. We're saying use your professional discretion to do whatever you think is right for the blizzard bag. But those are additional challenges.
Okay, so this is an early draft and
Early draft, yep.
see what happens.
And we'll notify you and bring you up to date each time there's a new rendition of the draft.
We put some pressure on Derek Lee. I'd like to have this
He said
for
that-
you to
he said-
vote on by February, by one of our meetings in February.
Yeah, he said first week of January, they'll be done, so,
Okay,
Thanks, Mike.
thank you.
thank you. Okay, policy second read. We have 6. These are all second read. We have GCRD, BDF, IGA, JKB, KDD, and KHE. A few minutes to review. When you're ready, if I could have a motion to accept the policies on second read.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, board comments and correspondence. I'm going to switch it up. Jason, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to go the other way.
I am all set.
Dangerous.
It's crazy. It's crazy. You're all set.
What's
Okay.
that?
Good.
You skipped right over me. Maybe I had
switched
something.
up. I switched it.
Oh,
Like
okay.
that?
Really out of order. I don't think I have anything either. No. I did nothing. Yeah, that's exactly what I did, nothing.
I'm good.
David, do you have anything?
Just looking forward to the Elf musical, and hopefully a lot of other parents are also. I think,
I know I am. There might be special guests, I've heard.
actually, not anymore.
No special guests?
No special guests as
Very
of last
upset.
night.
Secrets do tell.
There was going to be a Santa Claus showing up at the end. But Santa is busy with making toys and filling his bag and filling his reindeer bellies.
Busy.
Previous obligations.
Previous obligations.
That's too bad. I'm still sure it will be an amazing show, though,
I hear he's working on a funding plan for next year. So,
for all those toys.
all those toys.
All right.
Reflections tomorrow.
Dr. Metzler.
Very good. Personnel report. We have a resignation effective next year, given us really early notice. And a member of certainly Karen Gallagher's staff, Elizabeth Barlow, has been with us for 4 years, has an opportunity relocating, but has just been a great contributor to our special education department here, and is looking for your support to resign effective next year.
Motion to accept with resignation. Never mind, forget it. Motion to accept the resignation. Anybody?
Motion.
Thanks.
Second.
All in favor?
With regret.
With regret. That's what I was looking for, I just couldn't get there.
I was going to say it for you, but
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, sorry.
Okay, in your packets, you have a memo from our Chief Financial Officer, Jeff Dowd, regarding the SAU 55's board's adoption of the SAU budget unanimously last week in the amount of $2,310,499 for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. The memo contains Hampstead's apportioned amount, which is $537,182. Do have an update on the IDEA funds misallocation. Several district special education directors of districts affected by the IDEA funds allocations error met December 5th at the Derry SAU as promised. Karen Gallagher was among those in attendance. In your packages is a copy of that document that was shared regarding the allocations that each district would have received. For Hampstead, once again, the amount would have been $61,340.20. At that meeting, district reps discussed their needs and shared ideas on how funds might be used. Activities include professional development training in various areas, purchasing equipment, paying for paras at Pinkerton Academy, and paying for contracted services. However, student-specific activities would likely be rejected because Derry is not the LEA for any of our students. Chris Kellen, the Assistant Superintendent of Derry, will compile all the ideas. The deadline is December 13th, and share them with the DOE to see which activities are allowable. Then the group will reconvene for further discussion. So I'd like to thank Karen Gallagher and all those working on this. I'd like to see, and the commissioner is trying to be helpful as well. So we're cautiously optimistic. Jeff's not so optimistic. See, Mr. No. We're optimistic that we'll get somewhere at some point. Karen Gallagher, she just left, does an outstanding job here with special education, as you know. And so this next memo that we received is another indication. So we have compliance and improvement monitoring. It's called CIM by the Department of Education. So on December 6th, we got an email from the New Hampshire Department of Education, Bureau of Student Support, notifying that our district has not been selected to participate in the CIM process for the 2020-2021 school year. Not being selected is a good thing. The email provided information of our points earned based on a rubric from the district selection process for compliance and improvement monitoring as a means of self-review. In your packets are copies of the emails attachments, a letter describing the district scores for fiscal year 20, memo number 11, outlining the district selection process and scoring rubric. And what does all that mean? All that means is, again, Carrie Gallagher, her staff do a great job. You get points for doing it correctly, and you get points if you don't do it correctly. And if you look at the way that scoring is just it's an impeccable record here in Hampstead. And that's not true about just that year, it's about all the years. It does a fantastic job. So, moving on, the signage for our policy KI, visitors on school property, those signs were delivered late last week, 5 signs for each property. We had some special adhesive that was delivered today, so those signs will be going up by the end of the week, tomorrow or the next day. And so, we thank Jeff Mackey and certainly the rest of the staff for helping out with that. Last Friday, I happened to be, we had tree lighting going on, we had a lot going on in town, it was snowing, and we had an unfortunate incident that happened outside of our central school at about, I want to say a little after 4:30, late in the afternoon. Cars were going by, visibility was tricky, it was a little foggy, snowy, and one of our crossing guards was struck by a passing vehicle. The vehicle stopped, and there was some brief discussion. They didn't get the plate. Obviously, she was somewhat startled. Principal Collins was right on top of things. Hampstead Police Department was outstanding. They were there in a flash, and we were all able to meet there. And she's doing well, and she was back at work today, of course. But I don't want to call her out, but we have 2 great crossing guards there that work as a team. She was shaken and needed to get some medical attention over the weekend, but came right back and answered the bell and was back at work on Monday. Happy as could be out there. But I think for 2 reasons. One, I want to thank the commitment of our crossing guards that put themselves out there in harm's way at times to make sure that all of our families and certainly our children are safe crossing and staff crossing. I think that's important. I think it's also important that they know how much we care, and enough that we're going to talk about it here, to ask people to please know where you're driving. Sometimes we get distracted a little bit, you're going a little too fast, you're not paying attention. I'm not sure, it was an older gentleman that he even realized that he hit her. I don't know. I don't know what he knew. I just know that she was upset, she was letting him know, but I don't know if he knew that. We think it was a mirror that caught her in the side, in the back, but she had some injuries. But just a reminder out there to everybody that's driving to please, when you're around, especially around our schools and our kids, and you see school buses, just with caution, really, especially when visibility is poor. That was not a great incident, but it could have been much worse, and so we're very happy that she was able to recover and get back to work, and we certainly, again, we just want how much we appreciate our crossing guards and what they do for us. They do a great job. So that's my report for this evening.
Thank you, and we are very grateful that she's okay, ultimately. And just on that note, the community does notice our crossing guards and is always very complimentary of them. Even those who do not have children in the schools, there are comments on social media where people say, they do a great job, they keep everybody safe, they are always happy to chat you up as you're driving by if you want, but also that they do an impeccable job, and we are very lucky to have them. It's a tricky spot on Emerson there, and we have so many students and staff and parents and other community members crossing that street, so thank you very much to our crossing guards.
Yeah, to echo that too, it's the front porch of our school, and I can tell you every time I cross, they they make you smile, happy to be there. It's like, and I'll say their names, Donna and Paula. They just, they're great, and they give Mr. Flynn a hard time when he parks in one of their spots, which that's enjoable. So he almost had to toe his car because he was in Donna's spot, right? So he knows better now. That was a rookie mistake. I'm learning. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone have any other business or old business? Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Penny.
Can I have a motion to accept this consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? And publicly, thanks, Penny, for reminding us. Reminding me. Yeah. Any other business, old business anybody has? I don't think so. I do not have anything for a non-public this evening. I do know we need a non-meeting after this to talk about negotiations. So I think, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
What about discussion?
About what? About what? What did I miss? Okay. We're adjourned.